Hello and welcome to Healthful Roots podcast. This is Dr. Victoria Andarcia, and today we have Fran Morris. She is a health and wellness coach, and we've had the pleasure of working together with multiple of my patients who have benefited greatly from her knowledge. So thank you, Fran, for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Victoria. I appreciate you having me and appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, so today our goal is going to be to have our listeners get to know you a little bit more and also some introductions into health coaching and just a little overview so anyone who maybe needs a health coach and hasn't thought about it before can kind of start leaning in that direction. My first question for you is, can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to become a health coach?
Absolutely. Love that question. All right. So my background is kind of all over the place, but I'm going to try to tie it all together. So basically, I grew up in a household an Italian household where health and wellness and eating clean and all of that was very much a focus. So I've always had that in my life and always been very passionate about it. I was actually pretty sick as a kid. And my mom and my doc were able to kind of manage it. And I was introduced to the importance of daily moving, um, you know, dairy-free diet, which actually during that time, really people weren't even thinking about it. And it was life-changing for me as a young child who was chronically ill with asthma. And then fast forward, I had another sort of experience with Lyme disease. And so I've had these kind of journeys throughout my life, like most people, right, who end up in this space, right? We're hit with something and we're called. So I always felt this call to, like, at some point, I need to be able to help people and get into the health and wellness space. And that's when I decided to go back and get my master's in nutrition, which was like in my 40s. And I loved it. I mean, I can't get enough of knowledge, especially when it comes to health and wellness. And then I practiced nutrition for a bit, and it didn't take long before I realized, wait, there's something else going on here. I'm not, I'm missing something. I need to understand what is the driving force behind behavior change. And as a nutritionist, I didn't really understand that. I was kind of in this role as an, expert role, right? Like I dictated what people needed to do. And that never actually sat well with me because I really do believe that people know what's best for them. So I wanted to understand the psychology part. So I decided to go back and get my health coach certification, which was the best thing I did because it allowed me to come at my practice from a different angle. And I can now talk to my clients about all things wellness, be it daily movement, stress management, spirituality, relationships, personal development, so many different things because you can't tug at one and not affect the other, right? So it's a web of wellness. I like to think of it as. So as a health coach, it's important to be able to have the ability to discuss that with our clients. And the other thing that's different about health coaching versus being a nutritionist is that the client sets the agenda. When we have session, I'll say to a client, what's on your mind, right? And so they set the agenda. So it really gives them their power back. So yeah, that's how I ended up that's how I ended up as a health coach. Long
Okay.
story.
No, well, it's an important story. And from what you said, I do have a question just to help clarify for people who might not know. So what's the difference between a health coach and a therapist?
Yes,
If any. Yeah.
that's a great question. Um, okay. First of all, as a health coach, it would be out of scope to ever sort of play the role as a therapist. We're not a therapist. So with therapy, for the most part, although the model is changing quite a bit, which has been really wonderful to watch unfold, there's a lot of talk about kind of past and how your past is affecting your future and your decisions and all of that, which is an important thing, of course, right? And as health coaches, we sometimes go back and dig through that stuff as well. Um, but with health coaching, the goal is to, okay, here's where you're at presently.
Hmm.
How do we get you from here to where you envision this well life vision, this well life for yourself, like where you want to be. So it's more of a looking at it from a lens of here's where we're at, where do you want to be? And our work involves that part, right? We work, so it's less about being up here and digging through the past and more about let's get to work, let's figure out what it is that you want in your life, what is it that you desire, how do we get you to have the most fulfilling life where you're thriving on a daily basis.
Okay. Thank you for the
Does that make
clarification. Yes,
sense?
it does make sense. And I think that
Yeah.
that is an important distinction. It sounds like health coaching also is it's more goal oriented,
Yeah.
right, towards a specific goal that someone may have. So, based off of that, what are some of the challenges your clients face and how do you help them overcome it?
Okay. Great question. So at this time, my focus, just because I have been down this road myself as an overachiever and a perfectionist, most of the clients that I work with now come from that background. And it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about because it resonates with me so deeply because I've been there. I've been that person who always wants to be at the top. I've been that person who is always setting the next highest goal, sometimes not even achievable goals, right? But I continued on that path for a long time and then I hit my wall. So we hit my wall, not just like mentally, I hit my wall physically as well when I started to see some symptoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most of the people that I work with now, they are at the point where they have given everything to their work. They have lost themselves. They had no longer are connected with their true essence. Who am I? They don't know who they are. They've lost connections with relationships. They're just kind of going through the motions every day, and they're like, all right, wait a second. There's got to be more to life than this, and there is, right? And also people like that, perfectionists and overachievers. It's always we have a tendency to focus on what did I do wrong? What's not going well in my life? Well, that's kind of the, human, like that's just who we are, right? As a health coach, we focus on what's going well in our lives. What can we celebrate about ourselves? What are our strengths? Like as an overachiever and perfectionist, we have so many beautiful strengths,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes they're just out of balance, right? We just go a little too far to the other side. But I have helped these clients use those strengths to obtain their goals, their health goals. And it's been so beautiful to be able to see them say, wait a second, wait, so these strengths that I have can actually be used to my advantage? They can, yeah, absolutely. And I have an example. Can I share an
Yes,
example
of
of
course.
it? Yeah, I have. The work with this client was so incredibly powerful. I had a client who was primary earner, married with two children, worked in the pharmaceutical sales space, and just like really like killing it, right? Just doing really well. All kinds of accolades, president's like just doing really well, but there was still something not right. Still something not right. And when she came to me, it was, I just can't do this anymore. I need to get back to myself. I need to be able to have deep connections with my family, with my friends. And it was just kind of not happening. So, two of the things that we really worked on, really, really deeply worked on, was self care, which had she just didn't have time. If she had any free time, it was like that guilt, that guilt mom thing. I'm working full time. I have
Yeah.
children. I have a husband. I need to be able to spend that time with them, right? So self care, getting back into yoga, meditating, journaling, and then setting some really, really firm boundaries. And that was a really tough thing. And I think as overachievers and perfectionists, or just a lot of people in general, we just have a difficult time setting boundaries.
Yep.
And she she was just such a rock star, and she was like, she was ready to do this. And I recently received a message from her, which just brought the biggest smile to my face. She said, "I just have to share some news with you. I got chosen for the President's Club and won a trip, and I'm going on this trip with my family to Switzerland. I think it was Switzerland or Sweden. And I did it all by still taking care of myself." And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
yes, yes. See what happens? Like, it's okay. You can be an overachiever and still carve out time to take care of yourself and still have that fulfilling career and do all of that. In fact, you're in a better place, right? Because
Yeah.
if you take care of yourself and fill your own cup, what's that saying? Like, let's fill our cups, right? And
Hmm.
any overflow goes towards the other stuff, right? Towards work, towards building relationships, towards our family. We need to be in a grounded space in order to have deeper connections. Where and listen, I've been through it myself. Like, I know my family appreciates that I take care of myself, right? We all benefit from it. So
Yeah, you
yeah,
can
it's
be a
just
better person and show up better when you're taking
show
care of
up.
yourself.
Absolutely.
It sounds like this patient that you're describing, she was really, really ready for a change. But
Ready for change.
what would you say to the overachiever or perfectionist that tells you that they don't have time?
That's a
Because
great
I think that
question.
comes up a lot, right? It comes up a lot. Like, you asked her to do yoga, meditation, and journaling. And sometimes people feel like they don't have 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great question. And just to clarify, actually, she came up, and all of my clients do. She came up with the things that she wanted to prioritize. So
Okay.
she was the expert in determining. So what I would say to that person who says I don't have time, often as an overachiever, we are
Hmm.
all or nothing kind of people.
Yep.
Okay, we're all or nothing kind of people, and I would have the conversation that small changes are what leads to sustainability, and how we would be starting off small, and we would set small, they'd have this well life vision of what they want. That's their longer term goal. But let's just take it in small chunks. You don't have to do it all at once. Let's say in one week we're working together and you decide that you want to start journaling. Well, okay, perhaps as an overachiever, you want to journal every day for a half hour. Right? We say, okay, hold on, back up. Is that doable? Can you do that? Is that doable? So I would say just understanding that it doesn't always have to be big. In fact, the big doesn't always work, as we see with New Year's resolutions all the
Yeah.
time, right? Um, let's start off very, very small. Something that's going to fit into your life, something that you're doing because you want to do it, not because your doctor is telling you to do it, or your friends, or what is it that you want? And let's break it down into really, really small action steps. So
Okay.
that's what I
And
would
that,
say.
yeah, that makes sense. And I see that in my practice too, that people, they want to do all the things at once. But I feel, and I always tell them that if you try to do all the things at once, you're never going to come back and see me again, because you're
Oh,
going to get so overwhelmed that it's just not a sustainable process.
no, not a sustainable process. It's not. And I think the other thing is, when you do it in small steps like that, it's motivation to keep going because you start to see that things are changing. There's hope. You start to feel hope, like, wow, actually, I did that journaling and I didn't have to do it and I have clients like that where they're like, I get what you're saying, Fran, but I'm ready to go all in. I want to go all in. And
Yeah.
they think they're ready to go all in. And then we slowly realize that, wait a second, this is not sustainable, right? So it's a learning process of what it is that one wants in their life longer term, right? Not just like, let's just get in there and do all of the work at once. It's just not sustainable. We're not built that way, Victoria. As you know,
Mhm.
we just can't take that kind of approach in life, because we'll continue to fall. And if we continue to fall, then there's no motivation to keep going.
Yeah, because you feel like you're failing, right? So yeah.
Constant.
Okay, so
Yep.
aside from the small steps, what other advice would you give to someone who's starting their health journey and feeling overwhelmed by, whatever it is that they're trying to achieve?
Okay. Um, One of the things that I often hear from clients is there's so much information out there. I feel
Mhm.
so overwhelmed. I like I just don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Um, I would say, and I've said this to my, and actually, this has been like a weekly goal for some of my clients because they just they just keep digging and digging and digging.
Yeah.
They get on the internet, and we all know when it comes to the health and wellness field, there's so much conflicting information. It's overwhelming and confusing. So my advice would be take it all with a dose of skepticism.
Hmm.
Start trusting yourself as opposed to handing over your power to somebody else. Okay. And don't get so caught up in the rabbit hole of what's out there on the internet because it's an easy thing to do and you just become more confused, right? Like, don't learn to trust yourself, and learn to, that's that old saying, trust your gut, trust your intuition. Like, it's a real thing, right? Start to
Hmm.
you we all know, right? When we make decisions, we have a choice point, right? We can go this way, we can go that way. We inherently know, okay, I probably shouldn't go that way, but something just keeps on pulling me there, right? We inherently know what we need to be doing. um, and when you start to allow in information from the outside, it becomes very unclear. It becomes very, very unclear. So I would say, take a break from that and learn to trust yourself, and learn to just sit with yourself and understand what it is that you want to achieve in your life and what it is that makes you happy and brings you joy, and focus on those things as opposed to what somebody else is telling you that's going to bring you that happiness and joy.
Yeah, I agree. And I will add to that because it comes up a lot in my practice is that people also get caught up on what works for, like, oh, this worked for my friend, or this like worked for this other person. And all our bodies, all our situations are different, and not everything that works for the people around you is going to work for you. So I always tell people not to get caught up on trends, right? And like you said, just listen to your body, which I think is something that for some it takes some time to
Of
cultivate that.
course.
And especially if they're used to feeling, have constant abdominal pain or have constant fight or flight, like trusting your intuition takes time.
Of course.
So I would add that, and then always going down to the basics. I think a lot of times people are looking for something, quick, or like the new gadget, or like, cold plunging and this and that, which is all great, but it has to start with the basics. Um, I think we get a little
Agree.
carried away sometimes. And when you start adding all these other layers, if you haven't paid attention to how you're sleeping or how you're eating, um, it's not really gonna, it might make you feel a little bit better, but it's not gonna be long term.
Absolutely. Great point. Yeah. And the other thing is, it's incredibly anxiety producing and overwhelming to take in all of that information, the advice from friends, what you're reading, seeing on the internet. Um, People are like, most people who come to us, they're already in that sort of fight or flight, and they're anxious and they want to feel calmer and they want to have a better existence, right? People, it's just adding to the overwhelm by doing that, so.
Yeah.
And I have to say that, especially with the group that I work with, right, they want to know it, right? So they are constantly seeking out the information, and I have many who get really, really overwhelmed with it. So we do set goals like that, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you're not going on the internet this week. How do you feel about that? They're like, let's do it. And then at the old check in after, wow, it's been the most liberating thing,
Yeah.
and it is. It's incredibly liberating, to start to not rely on other outside information to get you to where you need to be.
Yeah, I agree. All right. And I have it's a somewhat personal question, but you
Please.
can give as much detail or as not as you want. But I think it would help someone who's going through something kind of determine when they need to shift. So you spoke earlier about hitting a wall. And so when you hit that wall, like what did it feel like? What in that moment made you say something needs to change?
Well, I actually know I know how it unfolded, and I'm happy to share this story. I really am. I was coming home, as I said, I kind of had this schedule where I could work. This was when I was my other career in
Mhm.
financial recruiting. I could work and then spend my afternoon with the kids and like have this, what I thought was like an ideal kind of situation. And I remember this specific day, and I was working on some big deal, recruiting deal, and I put my daughter on the back seat on my bike, and my son, because our kids are 8.5 years apart, and he was riding behind me. I had my daughter in the back, and my phone rings. So I decide to pull over. I'm working on this big deal, and I'm working through this deal. My son is like circling in the parking lot on his bicycle, and like an hour had passed by. Okay, I closed the deal. But I also had my son look at me and go, Mommy, please don't ever do that again. Please don't ever do that again. Never again. And it was that. But in addition to that, Victoria, I was already feeling physical symptoms. I was dealing with so much stuff. I didn't know I just had, I had burned the candle at both ends. And I just was, but having your child say that to you, and I'm like, this is it. It is time to get back to the basics and get back to the things that are really, really important in life.
Yeah, that is a good story. Thank you for sharing. And
Yeah.
it seems like it's such a small moment, right? And you're just in a parking lot on the phone, but how impactful those small moments can be.
So impactful. So impactful. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, he gave me such a gift. He really did. I mean, and there were other things. That was one of them, but it was all came together. It was a perfect storm. And I'm like, nope, this is not the way I want to live out the rest of my life. And I don't want the people who I love and care so deeply about and all of the things that I worked so hard for to
Yeah.
disappear because I'm just not being very present. And that to me was where my work was, learning to be really, really present.
Okay. And that'll lead into the next question because, obviously something had to change. Before I get to that question, what was the first thing that you did? Like when you were like, okay, I'm going to start changing things. What was the first thing?
The very first thing that I did was my inner work. And I know this is going to sound a little esoteric, but we all have, I'm going to call them imprints. Some people call them traumas, whatever it is that you want to call them. I like imprints better because trauma is just so like trauma. It's like, I love
Yeah.
the idea of an imprint, right? We all have imprints, and I needed to I needed to understand what those imprints were. So the first thing I did was enlist some help to get me to work through that stuff. Because if I didn't work, I started to understand if I didn't work through that stuff, that it was just going to continue to resurface for me, no matter how much yoga, meditation, or journaling, or any of that stuff. That I needed to tend to that part of me. And it was a long road. I mean, it took years to really unpack it all. But it was a necessary part of my journey. And then while I was doing that, I was starting to introduce, in fact, the avenue that I went down as part of the program, it was having to do some yoga, having to
Mhm.
meditate, having to sit in silence and just sitting with myself because I could never do that. I couldn't sit. I always had needed to have noise. I
Yes.
couldn't. It's a scary. I remember a client sharing with me that she went on a silent retreat and she couldn't stay. She's like, I just couldn't stay. She's like, there was so much going on. She's like, I just needed to I needed more noise, right? It's hard to sit with ourselves because when we sit with ourselves in silence, there's stuff that we have to address and we tend not to do that. So that is the first thing for me that I knew that was a really, in order for me to heal and get to a better place and be more present, that had to happen.
Yeah. I wish I could emphasize that more. It's a hard thing to emphasize how
It
important,
is.
like, and I love that you call it imprints. I love that because I have also been feeling that trauma is a very strong
That's a
word and
strong
has like
word.
a negative connotation, but
Hmm.
the imprints, make us who we are. Sometimes we just have to learn how to, get over certain things, but um I don't think that you can ever escape that, like
Can't escape
the
it.
past, right? You have to kind of manage it. And I had a therapist I worked with one time where she said, sometimes we get down on ourselves because we thought that we should have already dealt with the issue, right? But these things are going to keep coming up. It's just the more you look at it, the less it triggers you, right? Or
Exactly.
activates you. So you can just say, like, oh, like this bothered me today. Okay, well, I already worked on it and just move on. So it's a hard thing to emphasize, but I just want to highlight how important it is to do that inner work.
Yeah, it really is. And it's just, you start to get, you're just in a different mindset. Like things just can't I think it's becoming, I like to look at it as like being in like a sovereign or a rattle free kind of like rattle free, like you can't rattle me, rattle free state, right? Where no matter what happens around us, we can still, and listen, I'm a work in progress, right? I'm continuing to evolve and I have moments, but it's my recovery, being able to recover from things because life throws us curveballs and that's always going to be the case. So we can sit there and be hit really hard by those curveballs, or we can say, okay, this is part of life. I have the tools now. And that was a big thing, me gaining tools. And by the way, we all have different tools that we connect with, right? It's
Right.
not a one size fits all. Nothing is diet, any of that. It's all different. We have to find those tools that resonate with us, that we're going to be called to, that we're going to be excited about using. And you got to have a toolbox, right? And with health coaching, also, even though it's not therapy, we build out a toolbox, and so that my clients, when stuff does go down, they can pull out those tools. And I love getting those messages. Hey, Fran, I use this tool, in dealing with, and I'm like, you go. Like, you worked hard to get that tool because tools don't come easy, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing about health coaching. It's health coaching is only as successful as as the coachee, what you're willing to put in it, right? I don't perform miracles, right? I'm there to guide you. I'm there to support you. I'm there to hold you accountable. I'm there to help you celebrate not just your big wins, but your small wins as well, right? Because those are the really, really important ones that are going to get you to the big ones, right?
Hmm.
But it's a partnership. It's a co-active partnership between coach and coachee.
Yeah. And so for someone who doesn't really know, when you're saying tool, what's an example of a tool?
Okay, I'll use, an example of my tool when things have gone off course in my life, let's say. I don't know. My husband and I had a bit of a disagreement, right? Before I gain my tools, I can kind of be pulled right into that, right? And just play this kind of game of ping pong and go back and forth. Well, we both know that that's not going anywhere, right? It just, nobody feels good after. Now, if that happens, I roll out my mat. I roll out my yoga mat. I light a candle. I find my favorite restorative yoga practice or breath work, whatever it is, and I tend to myself. So I can get grounded and I can go back and come at it from a very compassionate, balanced, peaceful, connected angle.
I love that. That sounds so lovely. The yoga mat and the
It
candle.
is. It's just like, and just otherwise, I'm in this. I'm going.
Right.
I don't. I know I don't do well with that. So, or another tool could be if I'm feeling a little anxious. There's something going wrong. Put my sneakers on and I go out for a walk. I don't bring headphones. I don't want any distractions. I don't walk. I walk by myself.
Hmm.
I don't need a walking partner. I love
Yeah.
my friends, but my walks are my walks. And fortunately, I live near a place where we're on the Long Island Sound and there's a beautiful park. And I have a favorite little spot that I go to. And I just sit there and I'll close my eyes for a bit, gather myself, and then I'll just look out in this beautiful, scenic water.
Yeah.
And it's just miraculous. Like these things don't cost money. These are like simple interventions that we have, like the breathing, the yoga. I mean, you can find all kinds of yoga classes and breath work on YouTube, right? I mean, it's amazing, amazing what we can find, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, those are some examples. I mean, I have so many tools, but those are, I would say, my go-tos.
And I like those because it's so easy to do. I think in the moment you get wrapped up and you forget, like, oh, I have my tools, right? You can get wrapped up. I think that's part of the process and learning when to use these things, but they're so easy. And like you said, they don't cost anything. And
Yeah,
the walks, I love walks.
they're the
I think you've
best.
seen on my Instagram, I've been in Arkansas, and just walking around that lake
Beautiful.
is the highlight of my day. And then sometimes you're like, I'm too tired to go walk, on a walk today. But then once you get out there, you never regret it.
Never. Nobody ever said I regret going out for a walk.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said I regret being out in nature, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's powerful. It's a simple thing, and when I say simple, I don't mean simple in that it can take a lot to get ourselves to do something like that.
Yeah.
But I often work with clients to kind of set the stage for something like that. Like, if you're like, leave your sneakers by the door, or like start priming your space for things like that,
Hmm.
right? If you wake up and you're feeling a little off, roll out the yoga mat and know that it's always there. It's a visual, you see it, right? Or put something on your screen, your desktop, that is going to be soothing and relaxing for you. There's so many little things that you can do
Yeah.
to just help ground yourself and calm you. And the breath, like we just forget that we have this gift of our breath, right? We're all like going through our days and not realizing, like, to be able to take just a deep, even if it's like five, if we're anxious, and taking like five really deep belly breaths, and just,
Yep.
it's amazing
Game
how you
changer.
feel. Game
Yeah,
changer. And
it
it's
is.
just it doesn't take very long. It doesn't take very long. You don't have to set aside, a half hour to do that. You can, it just, yeah, there's so many little gifts that are free and
Hmm.
quick, that are transformative. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say the breaths isn't a one I try to do in sessions with people
Yeah.
because it only takes 2 minutes and you can really feel the difference afterwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. I often, if I start session with client and I could see a client is all like they're rambling and they're going, and with health coaching, we always ask permission. It's not like, okay, we're doing this. Hey, how do you feel about just, doing a little bit of breath work for a few minutes just to kind of set the stage for a really calming session? And nobody ever says ever, never, right? They all love it.
Yeah.
And afterwards, they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad we did it. And we get to accomplish so much more in that session, because the session, if we don't do that, is a lot of rambling. They're not getting what they need by the end of session. A half hour has flown by. And that's not the way we want things to happen, right? So let's get everyone into a calm state. And I've done it mid session too, where, somebody's kind of going off on a story. And I'll say to them, hey, I can see this is really upsetting you and rattling you.
Right.
Is it okay if we take some time just to take a few deep breaths? Yeah, let's do it. And then we get what we need. It's much more productive when we have a session and I even, by the way, in between my sessions,
Hmm.
I never like book sessions right after. I always set aside time to do some breathing exercises in between each of my clients, because as passionate people and compassionate and empathetic people, we hold on to a lot of the stuff
Yeah.
during session, right? So I don't want to bring that into next session. So I always set aside and allow enough time for me to just, even if it's for 3 or 4 minutes, just to ground myself and just sit with myself and do some breathing, and then I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I think it's also, it's going to be a little bit of a tangent, but I learned it with when I did my fellowship, integrative fellowship at University of Arizona. One, it's the intention. right? And the ceremony of it, which I remember
Yes.
anytime that we met, we would always do some sort of breath work or meditation before, because it was like a way to call your energy and your intention into
Yes.
that space. And so that's what you're doing in between clients, is like just clearing out and setting intentions. And you're doing that with your clients. I mean, sometimes I've thought like I should do this before I start every session so we can both be like in, locked in. I
Yeah.
don't always do it. But I think that's very powerful because you're setting the stage for what's coming next.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, on that note, you've already shared some of your tools with us, which I appreciate. But
Yeah.
what are your non negotiables when it comes to health and wellness?
Oh, my personal non-negotiables? Oh, I
Yes.
have so many of them. Oh my goodness. Okay, my non-negotiables. Um, Sorry, I'm thinking because I do have so many and I just want to highlight um, making sure that first and foremost, making sure that I tend to myself before I tend to anybody else.
Okay. I like that.
Just and by the way, that was not natural for me. That was it was like years of work because I always wanted to do for everybody else, and had that caretaker role, and yeah, that also led to my burnout. And I just my non-negotiable is my cup needs to be filled before I can help you or you or you or you. That is a non-negotiable for me. The other one is knowing when to say no, like setting my my non-negotiable is knowing when to set a boundary and being able to say I just can't, because I was that person who said yes to everything,
Yep.
and being able to say no. The other one is how I nourish my body. Like I know the power of, when I say nourish my body, I should say nourish my body and my soul, because yes, I'm nourishing my body with really good wholesome food. I love to cook. I love the process of preparing. To me, it's so meditative and very therapeutic. And I get that it's not for everybody. But my non-negotiable for health and wellness for myself is that I need to nourish my body every day,
Mm-hmm.
with really wholesome foods, with being able to filter out the messages that I don't want to expose myself. Social media, news. I don't listen to the news. I'm rarely on social media. I don't want that. I have
Right.
to, I know as a person, so I need to be able to nourish myself with things that are uplifting, not things that
Mm-hmm.
are going to deplete me. Um, Other non-negotiables, every day I wake up with I need to move my body in some way, and it doesn't have to be a big way every day. And as an overachiever, I have known to be a very rigid person. And yeah, rigidity. Let's shave away at the rigidity.
Yeah.
But it looks different now. My workouts look different. They used to be really high intense workouts, and not so rigid about, like, I just pay really close attention to my body now. And if I wake up and it's supposed to be like my weight training day, and my body's just saying no, um, I've I've learned to let go of that rigidity and say, you know what, today is a yin yoga practice, or if it's a light walk, or if it's whatever it is, So,
Yep.
but every day it's something. Like, I am not a person to, I don't feel good about myself if my day ends and I haven't tended to myself, whether it's in a, like high cardio state, or it's in a very meditative state. My non-negotiable is every day I need to tend to myself, and do the things that nourish my body and nourish my soul.
Yeah. I agree. We share that one in common.
Yes, we
I
do.
love exercise, but same. I'm still learning that balance though. of, I've gotten a little bit better, but of knowing when it has to be a yoga day and not a
Yeah.
high intensity day,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
just
And
helps so much with like the mind. But yeah, balance is important, and rigidity is another one. Okay. So on that note, to close up our session, how can our listeners connect with you or learn more about what you do?
yes, I would love to hear from your listeners. And what they could do is go to my website. My website is pureandmindful.com. And on my website, you can learn more about me, more about kind of my philosophy, more about my services. And in addition to that, there's an option to book a complimentary call. It's a 20-minute complimentary call where we just hop on and we get to know each other a little bit to see if we're a good fit. I mean, because ultimately that's the most important thing, right? To make sure we click, right? We need to be able to click, and we need it to be a good fit on it. It's not always, but that's the best way for them to get in touch with me. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from some of your
Okay,
listeners.
perfect. I will put that in the show notes so that people can reach out to you. And thank you, Fran, so much
Thank
for coming on
you.
the podcast. I love what you do, and I've seen how it works. When you've worked with my patients,
Thank you,
their
Victoria.
outcomes are always so much better. So I really appreciate you for that.
Thank you. And I appreciate you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for seeing the value in health coaching. And that to me is so important because not every physician does that. And you have always embraced it. And I really appreciate that. And I know because of that, your clients, your patients, my clients have gotten a lot better.
Yes. Well, thank you, Fran.
Thank you,
All
Victoria.
right.
Great to see
Bye.
you.